Mm-hmm.
Well, first we're going to go through the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And that's Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5. And that's repeated several times in the Old Testament, and it's repeated in the New Testament as the Great Commandment in Matthew 22, 36 to 40. And they said, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he called it the Great Commandment. And he said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." And you'll notice there's a slight difference. First, we'll talk about hear and what the Hebrew word translated as fear means. Then the implications of that and the New Testament versions of that. Then we'll talk about, in Deuteronomy, they say heart, soul, and mind, and might. And in Matthew, they say heart, soul, and mind instead of might. But that's because that's a Hebrew what do you call it? It's like an idiomatic expression where it just means you're all. It's not saying these three things and nothing else. It's a way in Hebrew of poetically saying everything. Okay, so love the Lord your God with your all. And then we'll talk about, again, hearing and loving God with your all, and the New Testament versions of those. And then we'll explain when he says, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. We'll discuss how all the law follows from that, from the Shema, and how the prophets who are correcting things follow from the Shema. And then, if you want, as examples, we'll go through the Ten Commandments. And it's important to remember sola scriptura when you're doing this. And it's important to start with why. Why are you doing this? Okay. And then we'll go through the Ten Commandments, and with each one, and we will note that there's a table here, which actually in the video, if I get the video for editing, I can insert the table. And depending on whether you're Jewish or Catholic or Lutheran or Protestant, there are different numberings of the Ten Commandments because they're not numbered in the Bible. And we'll discuss a little bit about the different numberings. Then I'll go with the standard Protestant numbering for the memory aids. And we'll walk through each of the Ten Commandments, discussing how to remember it so that there are different memory aids, like the fifth commandment is honoring your parents. Remember, there are 5 fingers on a hand that spanks you, okay? So that's how, remember, five fingers is getting spanked by your parents. Okay, and there's that for all of the 10 commandments. And the 11th commandment, when Christ said he gives us a new commandment to love one another. So there'll be memory aids for all of those. And the idea is the memory aid should not just cause you to remember the commandment, but to give you a deeper understanding of what it means. Like the 3rd, 8th, and 10th commandments are much broader than most people think. Most people don't misunderstand what the 3rd commandment is about. And the 3rd, 8th, and 10th all imply much more than people think they do. And then to summarize, you don't want to get bound up in, while you want to a discussion of Lordship salvation and how Lordship salvation is a statement about sanctification, not justification. And you need to distinguish, you need to avoid antinomianism. So you don't want to become legalistic, but you want to do good works as fruit of the Spirit. That's the 6th fruit of the Spirit. I have memory aids for fruits of the Spirit too, but that's another time. But the 6th fruit of the Spirit is goodness, which really means good works, which is works. So it follows from the fruit of the Spirit, but you don't get that until after you have the Holy Spirit in you. So it doesn't have anything to do with your justification, only your sanctification. But if you, there's Lordship salvation and the idea of cheap grace, and if you get too hung up on, I need to obey the commandments as how I get into heaven through my obedience to the commandments, that's antinomianism, and that's false. But like in Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, people usually stop there, but Ephesians 2:10, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9 tell you you're saved by faith. But Ephesians 2:10 tells you you're saved for works, which is one of the fruits of the Spirit. So you're saved by grace, and that avoids antinomianism. You're saved by grace. But you're saved for works. That's a fruit of the Spirit, which is part of your sanctification. So you have to distinguish between sanctification and justification. And in that's hard because you have people want to follow Lordship salvation, and that leads them to legalism, or they want to follow good works, and that, okay. And then you need to always end with, it's a balance. You need to understand faith and works. You need to understand grace and truth. You need to understand mercy and justice. And you got to get a rope. All right, so first, it's actually going to take a while to get through the Shema. I'm actually wondering if we're going to do this today. The thing I got from the Shema, it's on the web and it's in the bottom. And if I get to edit the video, I can insert both the table of how different denominations number the 10 Commandments, and the link for this Jewish discussion of the Shema. And they even have their own version, or the guy doing the discussion says, based on this discussion, let's read it. And his retranslation is, Israel, pay careful attention and respond. Yahweh works in unity with himself, and you shall act upon your love to Yahweh with your thoughts and minds and your entire body and with everything that you possess. So that's sort of another translation that's legitimate after you go through what all the Hebrew words mean. Okay.